The Galactic Council had long ruled the galaxy, a coalition of advanced species with vast knowledge and power. They had maintained their dominion for millennia, effortlessly imposing their will on countless civilizations. But then came humanity, a relatively young species from a primitive planet called Earth, and despite their technological limitations, the Council had begun to notice something troubling. In just a few hundred years, humans had made remarkable progress, rapidly advancing their technology and, more troubling, their military capabilities. At first, the Council had dismissed Earth as insignificant. Their primary interest was in controlling planets that were rich in resources, keeping them within their fold for exploitation. Humans were nothing more than an anomaly, a species whose continued survival was a curious, but ultimately inconsequential blip in the grand scheme of things. But soon, that perception began to change. The humans had begun to push boundaries in ways no other species had done before. They had discovered new energy sources, developed faster than light travel, and, most alarmingly, seemed intent on pursuing an unprecedented military agenda. The first warning signs came when Earth launched a fleet of ships to defend a distant colony from a hostile alien species. The ships weren't large or heavily armed by Galactic Council standards, but they were fast, agile, and remarkably effective in combat. They won the battle, and in doing so, sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. The Council's high-ranking officials convened in their private chambers, their faces solemn and concerned. The time had come for decisive action. If humanity were allowed to continue its unchecked rise, it could very well become a threat to their entire empire. The Council, never one to tolerate threats, decided to issue an ultimatum. Earth must submit to galactic authority, or it would be destroyed. The message was sent, and the human leaders on Earth received it. The humans responded in their typical manner, determined, defiant, and unyielding. The leaders of the Galactic Council underestimated humanity's resolve. They thought the message would break human spirits, force them to kneel before the superior power of the galaxy. They had seen it happen with other species who, faced with overwhelming odds, caved into the demands of the Council. But they underestimated the humans. A meeting was convened on Earth, not in some grand, sterile council room, but in a small, secure bunker beneath the surface. Earth's leaders, from military commanders to diplomats, gathered to discuss their response. There was no fear, no hesitation. They had already begun preparing for this moment. The Galactic Council had issued an ultimatum, but humanity had its own surprise in store. The human diplomat, a veteran of intergalactic negotiations, stood before the group. "We don't negotiate with bullies," he said. "The Council wants to wipe us out because they fear us. They fear what we could become, what we could do. And they're right to fear us." One of the military commanders nodded. "We've spent years preparing for this. The Council won't know what hit them." Another diplomat, one more cautious than the others, spoke up. "But what about their fleet? We know how vast it is, how powerful." "We have something they don't," the diplomat responded. "We have unity. We have the will to fight, to protect our home. We've made advancements they never saw coming." The commander leaned forward. "It's time to show them just how wrong they are. We've built a fleet of our own. A fleet of ships they'll never expect. Ships they can't fight." As they spoke, the leaders of Earth were already in motion. Over the years, the human military had been secretly constructing ships, advanced warships powered by a revolutionary energy source that the Galactic Council had no knowledge of. These ships were unlike anything the Council had ever seen, far superior in speed, maneuverability, and firepower. But it wasn't just the technology that made humanity's fleet formidable. It was the ingenuity of the humans who had designed it and the boldness with which they were prepared to use it. The Terran fleet was a mix of smaller, more nimble vessels and larger, heavily armed ships, all integrated into a cohesive force. Each ship had been crafted to maximize efficiency, adaptability, and versatility. Humans had long learned to adapt under pressure, and that ability was built into every ship, every weapon, every strategy. The fleet was more than just a symbol of humanity's military might. It was a declaration that they would not be intimidated or subjugated. They would stand their ground. The message was sent to the Galactic Council, a simple but powerful statement. We will not submit. We will fight. And we will win. The Council's response was swift, a massive fleet of their own, thousands of ships converging on Earth. They believed this would be the end. They thought the humans were simply too primitive to pose a real threat, but that belief had been shattered. Humanity had made its move. The Council gathered in their Grand Council chamber, awaiting Earth's response. They expected panic, fear, and a quick capitulation. Instead, they were greeted with a video transmission showing Earth's newly formed fleet, ready for war. The Council's leaders sat in stunned silence, disbelief crossing their faces.
How could this be?
How had humanity managed to build such a fleet? The Galactic Empire was supposed to be the pinnacle of civilization, with centuries of technological advancement. How had a backwater planet like Earth managed to outpace them? The Galactic Council had miscalculated in a way they would soon regret. They had underestimated the one thing no empire could ever truly control: the spirit of a people who refused to be subjugated. The human fleet wasn't just a collection of ships, it was the embodiment of everything the Galactic Council had feared. And now, they would face the consequences of their arrogance. As the Council debated their next move, the Terran fleet prepared for action. Humanity had not only accepted the challenge, they had embraced it. The countdown had begun, and the war for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The moment the Galactic Council's fleet appeared on Earth's radar, the Terran fleet moved into position with unparalleled precision. Humanity had been preparing for this day for years, and now it was finally here. The Galactic Council, once the unquestioned masters of the galaxy, had underestimated the human spirit, and more importantly, their technological prowess. Earth's ships were not just designed to defend, they were designed to dominate. The Terran fleet, a mix of sleek, nimble fighters and formidable capital ships, emerged from Earth's orbit in a display of sheer might. The ships were equipped with a newly developed energy source that far surpassed the efficiency of any known alien power generation. The Council had assumed that their advanced technology would leave Earth in the dust, but they were in for a rude awakening. The human ships were not just faster, they were equipped with weapons that the Council had never seen before: energy beams capable of disabling ships in a single strike, shields that could absorb massive damage, and advanced targeting systems that made the Terran fleet almost impossible to evade. The first strike was swift and decisive. A small fleet of Council ships attempted to engage, thinking they could overwhelm the Terran ships with sheer numbers. They were wrong. The human fleet, agile and precise, outmaneuvered them at every turn. Human captains, using guerrilla tactics that the Council never expected, swiftly disabled multiple alien vessels. One by one, the Council ships fell, their advanced systems failing to cope with the rapid, unpredictable strategies employed by their human adversaries. The Council's leaders, watching from their distant command center, were stunned. They had believed that humanity's fleet would be a mere nuisance at best, a fleet of crude ships easily crushed by their superior forces. But this was no longer a skirmish, it was a battle that would reshape the power dynamics of the galaxy. As the Terran fleet made its mark, Earth's message was clear: humanity would not bow to the will of the Galactic Council. The Council's arrogance had led them to misjudge the strength of a species that had long been underestimated. The very same Council that had once believed Earth was nothing more than a distant, irrelevant planet now found itself faced with an enemy unlike any it had ever encountered. The Terran fleet's commander, Admiral Evan Wolf, stood in the heart of the flagship, observing the chaos unfolding across the battlefield. His voice was steady as he issued orders to his crew. Maintain formation.
Keep the pressure on them.
Let them know we're just getting started. His eyes flicked to the holographic display where the enemy ships were beginning to retreat, their attempts to regroup futile against the human onslaught. Wolf had long known that humanity's strength was in its adaptability, and it was this quality that made them so dangerous. While the Council relied on their vast knowledge and centuries of technological superiority, humanity thrived on innovation, on turning the unexpected into an advantage. Each battle gave them new information, new strategies. The Terran fleet was evolving in real time, adapting to the Council's tactics, finding weaknesses, and exploiting them before the enemy had time to react. As the first wave of Council ships retreated, a second, larger wave arrived. The Council's elite forces had been mobilized, massive warships, heavily armed and seemingly invulnerable. But humanity was ready. The Terran fleet's smaller, more nimble ships darted through the enemy lines, drawing fire away from the larger, more vulnerable capital ships. The larger Terran vessels then fired with deadly precision, targeting weak points in the enemy's hulls and shields. The tactics were not new, they were basic, almost instinctual, but they were executed with an efficiency that made them unstoppable. In one particularly intense engagement, a Council flagship, a massive vessel designed to intimidate and overpower any enemy, found itself outgunned. The flagship's massive cannons fired repeatedly, but the human ships darted through the blasts, their evasive maneuvers rendering the attacks useless. Within moments, the flagship's shields were down, and its hull was taking damage. The human ships, relentless in their pursuit, launched a final barrage, crippling the once mighty vessel. Back at the Council Command Center, panic was beginning to set in. The leaders who had once spoken with absolute certainty now found themselves grasping at straws, scrambling for a way to regain control of the situation. Their intelligence had failed them. The human fleet was not just a defensive force, it was a carefully orchestrated military machine, one that was more than capable of defeating their own. The question now was whether the Galactic Council had any chance of stopping them. "We need to send in reinforcements," one council official suggested. But it was too late. The humans were already on the move. The Terran fleet wasn't waiting around for the Council to regroup. They were pushing forward, advancing toward the heart of Council-controlled space. The Council's fleets were crumbling under the pressure, their formations shattered, their morale shattered along with them. Admiral Wolf stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the display. The Terran fleet had already achieved a decisive victory in this first engagement, but they were not done. The Galactic Council had launched an all-out assault against Earth, and the human fleet had responded with force. Wolf's next move would be even bolder. "We've broken their lines," he said, his voice resolute. "Now we finish this." The attack on the Council's central command was imminent. If the Terran fleet could take out their flagship and disrupt the Council's leadership, the war could be won. But the stakes were high. The Council's remaining forces were massing for a final stand, but Wolf and his fleet had a clear advantage. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't just their technology, it was their will to fight, to protect everything they had worked for, everything they had fought for. They would never give up, and they would never surrender. As the Terran fleet advanced toward the heart of the Galactic Empire, it was clear that humanity was not just a player in the galaxy, they were a force to be reckoned with. The Galactic Council had pushed too far, underestimated humanity too severely, and now they would pay the price. The war for the future of the galaxy had begun, and humanity was ready to take its place as a dominant power. The battle raged on as the Terran fleet pressed forward, their tactical superiority becoming more evident with every encounter. Humanity had taken the initiative, and now the Galactic Council's forces were scrambling to adapt to the relentless assault. The sheer unpredictability of human tactics, combined with their advanced technology, was proving to be a nightmare for the Council's experienced commanders. Admiral Wolf's fleet continued its push, undeterred by the sheer scale of the enemy forces. Their primary objective was clear: disrupt the Council's command structure and force their leaders to capitulate. Wolf knew that as long as the Council remained unified, they would keep sending wave after wave of reinforcements. The key to victory lay in breaking their resolve. Destroying the leadership would be the final blow. Human ships darted through the battlefield with unmatched agility, outmaneuvering the larger and slower Council ships. Every move was calculated to exploit the weaknesses in their enemy's strategy. While the Council relied on overwhelming firepower and numbers, humanity thrived on adaptability, making the most of every advantage. It wasn't just the technology, it was the relentless ingenuity of the human captains, who had learned to turn every encounter into a lesson and use that knowledge to shape their next strike. The first major breakthrough came when the Terran fleet intercepted a Council convoy carrying reinforcements. The Council believed it was a routine mission, but the humans had already mapped out the convoy's route and planned their ambush with precision. Terran ships surrounded the convoy, cutting off all escape routes before the Council could react. Within moments, the convoy was disabled, its ships crippled by precise strikes to their engines and power cores. The Council had hoped the reinforcements would tip the balance in their favor, but instead, the humans had turned their own strategy against them. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human leadership understood the stakes. Every victory on the battlefield was a step closer to reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. But there was no room for complacency. The Council still had formidable assets at their disposal, and they would continue to fight back with everything they had. The Terran fleet could not afford to lose momentum. The next battle came in the form of a direct assault on a Council stronghold in a distant star system. The stronghold, a heavily fortified station at the edge of Council space, was believed to be the nerve center of their command. If it fell, the Council's ability to coordinate their remaining forces would be severely crippled. The human fleet, having learned from previous engagements, approached with an entirely new strategy, one that the Council had never seen before. Instead of a direct confrontation, the Terran fleet employed a method of psychological warfare. They launched a series of decoys and feints, drawing the Council's forces into a trap. The decoys, designed to mimic the human ships in every detail, created chaos among the Council's ranks. The Terran fleet used the confusion to strike at key weak points in the stronghold's defenses. It wasn't just a physical assault, it was a battle of wills. The human fleet had mastered the art of deception, turning the Council's own arrogance against them. As the Terran fleet closed in on the stronghold, the Council commanders scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had already infiltrated the station's defenses. A coordinated strike on the stronghold's central command center left the Council's leadership in disarray. The communication lines were severed, and the remaining forces had no idea where to direct their fire. The once imposing stronghold, thought to be an impregnable bastion of the Galactic Council, now lay in ruins. The shockwaves from the destruction of the stronghold were felt throughout the galaxy. The Council's enemies, once hesitant to oppose such a powerful empire, now saw an opportunity. Rebel factions, long suppressed, began to rise up, emboldened by humanity's success. The idea that a backwater species like Earth could not only stand against the Council, but defeat them was spreading like wildfire. The Galactic Council was losing its grip on its dominion, and now even some of their allies were questioning their allegiance. Back at the Council's command center, panic was setting in. The once impenetrable leadership structure was crumbling. Their fleets, once considered invincible, were now retreating, unable to withstand the relentless pressure from the Terran forces. The Council had sent everything they had, elite battalions, entire fleets, but humanity refused to relent. They had underestimated the power of unity, the power of a species that had nothing left to lose. The once mighty Galactic Council, with its centuries of dominance, now found itself on the brink of collapse. Admiral Wolf surveyed the battlefield from his flagship, his expression grim but resolute. The Council's elite forces, known for their ruthlessness and advanced weaponry, had been outmatched at every turn. Wolf knew that the key to ending this war once and for all lay in one final strike. A direct assault on the Council's central command would bring the galaxy to its knees. The time had come to end this fight. Prepare for the final assault, Wolf ordered. We take the heart of the Council today. The fleet began to assemble, each ship primed for the assault that would determine the future of the galaxy. Wolf's voice rang out across the fleet's comms. This is it. We have the advantage. This battle is for every human, every world that's ever been threatened by the Council. We fight not just for Earth, but for every species that's ever been enslaved by these tyrants. As the fleet surged forward, Wolf felt a surge of determination. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity, and now it was time for them to pay the price. The final battle was about to begin, and there was no turning back. The Terran fleet would show the galaxy that humanity could no longer be ignored, that they would never bow down to anyone again. With the final assault underway, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Terran fleet, having weathered wave after wave of enemy fire, was poised to deliver the final blow to the Galactic Council. The Council, once the unquestioned rulers of the galaxy, would soon learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. The Galactic Council's defeat was now a reality, but the victory was far from the end. Humanity had not only won a war, they had upended the very order of the galaxy. The Council's power had been shattered, and with it, the long-standing hierarchy that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. The old ways had crumbled, and now humanity had to decide how to fill the void. The galaxy had been thrown into chaos, and the Terran fleet was at the center of this new world. The true challenge had just begun, maintaining peace and securing humanity's place among the stars. As the remnants of the Council's forces scattered, Admiral Wolf and his command staff gathered to discuss their next steps. The victory was significant, but the challenges ahead were even greater. While the Council had been defeated, they had left behind a fractured galaxy with numerous factions eager to fill the power vacuum. Rebels, warlords, and old alliances would not easily surrender the space they had controlled for so long. Humanity's victory had shaken the foundations of power, and now every faction would be scrambling for control. "We've won the war," Wolf said, his voice steady but laden with responsibility. "But we need to ensure that this victory doesn't become meaningless. If we leave a power vacuum, someone else will take advantage of it. We can't afford to let the galaxy fall into chaos." His officers nodded in agreement. Wolf's words were a sobering reminder of what lay ahead. The Council had not only been an oppressive regime, they had been the glue that held the galaxy's fractured factions together. Now that the glue had dissolved, the galaxy was a powder keg, and the Terran fleet was the only thing keeping it from exploding. The next phase of the mission was not about destruction, it was about rebuilding. The Terran fleet, once a symbol of humanity's defiance, was now the beacon of stability. Admiral Wolf's orders were clear: establish peace through strength. The galaxy needed a new order, one that was not based on tyranny, but on cooperation and respect for the sovereignty of all species. As the fleet moved to secure key systems, representatives from Earth began negotiating with the remaining factions. Wolf knew that humanity would need allies, that it could not impose its will on the entire galaxy without facing overwhelming resistance. The negotiations were delicate. The factions, many of whom had long suffered under the Council's rule, were wary of the Terran presence. They had seen what humanity was capable of, and while they admired the Terran strength, they feared what would come next. Humanity's diplomatic efforts were not without obstacles. Many of the factions had lived under the thumb of the Council for so long that they didn't trust the Terrans' promises of peace. They saw the humans not as liberators, but as a new force to be reckoned with. And as human forces moved through the galaxy, ensuring the Council's remnants were fully wiped out, resistance flared in various systems. These rogue groups were not interested in peace, they wanted power, and they weren't afraid to fight for it. Wolf understood that this was the natural consequence of the collapse of the Galactic Council. When an empire as vast as the Council's falls, it doesn't just create opportunities, it creates chaos. But Wolf was determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. He had no interest in becoming a new dictator. Instead, he saw this as an opportunity to build something better, something more just. Earth would lead, but not dominate. Humanity's strength would be used to guide, not control. As the days passed, Wolf's fleet began to form alliances with those who had once been enemies of the Council. Slowly, systems were brought into the fold, each one contributing to the new coalition that was emerging. There were setbacks, of course, skirmishes with rogue factions, diplomatic failures, and distrust from certain corners of the galaxy. But there were victories as well. The fragile alliances formed, new trade routes were established, and humanity's influence spread far and wide. Despite the progress, there was always the underlying tension. The galaxy had been ruled by fear for so long that the concept of peace felt foreign to many. The Terran fleet, once feared for its might, now had to prove that it could be a force for stability, not just conquest. The balance of power had shifted, And now it was up to humanity to show that they could handle their newfound role with responsibility. The first true test came when a faction, one of the more powerful remaining holdouts of the Council, attempted to launch a counteroffensive against the Terran fleet. They had misjudged humanity's resolve. They thought the human forces, exhausted from the long war, would be easy to defeat. But they quickly learned that the Terran fleet was not so easily deterred. In a brutal but calculated engagement, humanity's forces crushed the rebellion. The message was clear: humanity would not hesitate to defend what they had fought for. After the battle, Wolf stood before his fleet once again. The victory was hard-won, but it was necessary. "We've shown them that we will not back down," he said. "But we must also show them that we are capable of more. Our actions must speak louder than our weapons. We've won the war. Now we must win the peace." Wolf's words resonated across the fleet. The war had been a testament to humanity's strength, but the peace would be their greatest challenge. The galaxy was a vast, complex place, and there would be no easy answers. Humanity had to navigate the delicate balance of power, guiding the galaxy toward stability without falling into the same traps of oppression that the Council had once set. As the Terran fleet continued to patrol the galaxy, securing systems and enforcing peace, the future seemed uncertain. But one thing was clear: humanity had proven that they could rise to any challenge. The galaxy had been reshaped, and it was now humanity's responsibility to guide it toward a new future. No longer would they be the underdogs. They had shown the galaxy their true strength, and now they would lead, not by force, but by the principles of justice, cooperation, and the belief that no empire, no matter how vast, should ever control the stars.